Alright, good morning. This is the project of the day. I'm going to take off, or I'm going to fix up this inner fender well now that I know where everything's going to go. Pretty shabby looking. We're going to fix that. While I got everything off, I'm going to go ahead and do these plugs and gap them first. That way I don't forget. So that'll be first order business. Alright, the first piece is coming along pretty well. Made this, had to relieve a few spots just to get this thing to where it'll sit right. I cut this out of, I don't know what that is, 1/8 inch, something like that, stout, and then that drops in there, and tightly fit up there, and then we'll also come in and weld it from under here. There's some gaps there that I'll need to take care of first. It's not sitting down all the way. I'm trying to do this with one hand. But yeah, that's coming along pretty good. We'll worry about the sheet metal here afterwards. But this is a frame section, so I'm going to box it real nice, and maybe that'll help some of this front end rigidity a little bit. The sway bar mounts right there, and so there's quite a lot of force that's applied to this. It's kind of lax on my part that I never boxed it, but that was a long time ago, and I'd had all I could take by the time I got to that point. Alright, we're going to fix that though. Alright, I got everything ground down and ready for welding. A little hard to tell. I got all the paint off and everything so I can get that welded up good. One thing is that that's where the engine ground is bolted right there, and I considered putting a hole in the top plate so I could access that, but I think what I'm going to do is just weld it in. That way it'll just be a captured nut if I ever have to take that ground strap off on the bottom of the frame rail. So it's in there for good now. Alright, I'm going to get the welder all set up and we'll see what we can do about getting that. Alright, pretty much ready to start welding. I got it in here. I left just a little bit of an overhang there. I'm going to run a bead all along there and then come to the underside. Let's see if I can focus on what I'm trying to look at here. Oh, yeah. There we go. And run the bead all along there, or as much as I feel like doing. That's a lot of welding, so time to get to it. Alright, so round one of the welding is pretty well done, and yeah, I'm not the world's best welder. In fact, I'm probably ranked down there in the bottom, but that's okay. That's not going anywhere. I'll clean it up, scrape off any scale or debris, and then give it a good shot of paint. Still got to do the bottom, but quick update on that. Still got to tackle this area here, and yeah. Now, after putting some thought into this, it's not as trivial as it seems. I mean, I could cut the whole thing out of there, but I'd never make it match right, and I can't bend metal very well. I don't have a shrinker, stretcher, or bending brake or anything like that. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to relieve those two dips by cutting a slot in the middle and flattening them out, and that'll make it easier to tie into that lower brace. Trying to match that contour and then bend it over. It's just an awkward shape because of the way it was cut before. So this part here is easy. I'm just going to patch that up. I'll probably just cut that square and make a patch panel for it and fill in all these holes individually, because I've done that before and it isn't hard. It's just time consuming. But yeah, this part down here is going to take a little work. So I'm going to start getting on it. So I took my grinder and I cut a relief cut in it, and then I used the hammer and dolly to flatten them back out. It's a good start. Alright, so change one. I just went ahead and cut all that stuff out. That wasn't going to work, but that area is going to be flat, so that'll work. I made a little section here to fit in there. That'll be the angle. Tack that in. And I should just have to make one flat area there. That should work out pretty well. Alright, I made this paper template of the top piece and I transferred it to a piece of 22 gauge steel. And yeah, it's thin. It's not structural really. And it's hard to weld basic butt welds this whole way, but I'm going to do it. And it'll be fine. We'll see. If you're not lucky enough to have a metal cutting bandsaw, there's lots of different ways you can cut this thin sheet. One is with snips, but you're likely to warp it if you try to take big cuts. What I usually do is take it down with a grinder first, but be aware that this can happen and you never know where those pieces are going to go, so be safe, wear face protection, glasses, gloves, all that business, because that'll put a hurting on you if it hits you. I got lucky this time, but yeah, I took the guard off. I needed to in order to get where I needed to get, but when you do that, you take your chances, so be careful. At any rate, after cutting the rough shape with the grinder, I finished it off with the tin snips to trace around that edge. Let's go see how it fits. Try to get these as close as possible the first time around, because man, it sucks to have to sit there and fine-tune edges all day long. There's no getting around it, but yep, it falls right through. That's a good sign, really. That means it's not too massively over size. See if I can get it balanced there. Just right. Alright. That looks pretty good, really. Alright, I'll do some fine tuning with the file and a Dremel until I can get it just the right size. A little more work cleaning up the inside here. Boy, that red is just on there good. Rust-Oleum red does a really fine job of covering, but you can't paint on top of it and expect it to stick. So I'll probably wind up priming this and paying a little attention to it to get it back looking good. A lot of holes to fill. About ready to start welding on that bottom part. The rest of them are just circles and holes, and I'll cover those individually. Yeah, I know this is kind of a sidetrack, but it needs to be done, so what the heck. Now, if that's not some gnarly looking welding, I don't know what is, and I mean that in the worst sense of the word. But you know what? Once I grind it down and everything, you'll never be able to tell. I'll probably put some seam sealer on those inside corners and grind the rest. So yeah, 22 gauge butt welding. Tough to get the heat settings right. I'm using an older Lincoln, and yeah, that's what I was doing to get the plate to the 10 or to the 22 gauge. But the 22 gauge by itself is really finicky. It's easy to burn through it or have it just spatter all over the place. So, yep, we're moving along. Still got to do a bunch, but it's all in one piece now. Lots of holes after I grind it down, I'm sure. Alright, this is a repeat of the other process. That's sitting in there all by itself, so I got the size pretty good. I'm still going to have to weld it up, obviously. But we're getting there. Still got several holes to fill after that, but they're small. The smaller ones I'll probably just stitch weld shut, and the bigger ones I'll make a patch for. I'll show you that too. Alright, that's the initial weld. I still got to go around and fill in all the spots, and I'm just waiting for it to cool down a little bit. Probably do some more tomorrow. Oh, by the way, the silicone adapters came in, one for the throttle body to elbow, and then the 45 I needed from the first elbow to the second that goes to the intercooler, and I did a test fit on there, and it looks like it's going to work pretty well, and I'll show you that when I get to it. But yeah, we can continue to go ahead and finish up this part of the project because it's kind of holding up everything else. Alright, still working it out. Took a little break from welding to try to get some stuff smoothed out a little bit. It's coming along. I mean, there's going to be pinholes galore, but the idea is to get it smooth enough to where just a skim coat of body filler will take care of leveling the surfaces and not leaving a big mess. I've still got some work to do, but we're making progress. Continuing with the tediosity, getting these other holes filled in. More grinding. couple more to go. Alright, I've had just about enough welding and grinding and polishing and doing whatnot for a while. I'm going to go ahead and clean this all up, skim coat it, paint it, and be done with it so we can get back to our main project. So the little holes like that I'm just going to fill. Those are so small I don't feel like trying to weld them up. Alright, not going crazy with the prep. I'm going to do a self-etching primer first, then lay down some putty, smooth it out, then some filler primer, sand it, and then we'll paint it after that. So that's just probably all the surface prep I'm going to do. Alright, that's just the self-etching primer base. I just like to put that down on the bare metal before I do anything else. Body filler will go over that. Oof, a lot of pinholes. Terrible welding. First skim coat is going to be a good bit more going down. Just wanted to test the waters a little bit. Get a little bit down there and get where it needed to be. Alright. Yep. And while I'm in between waiting for coats of Bondo to dry and paint and so forth, I'll start working on the intercooler mounting a little bit. I got the metric bolts that'll connect up to those, and I'll probably cut them to length on the bottom and figure out some sort of retention mechanism, because I don't like the idea of bolts just coming up from the bottom and not being positively locked. They should vibrate loose after time, so we'll figure something out. Alright, the two places I've marked is where it needs to go. Didn't get perfect on my spacing. They're a little towards the insides of those, but it won't really be a big issue. I'm going to use a drill bit that's just slightly bigger than the M8 screw that I'm putting through there, and that'll give me a little bit of wiggle room. So I'll drill a pilot hole with the small drill bit, and then I'll use a 3/8 inch drill bit to make the rest of the hole. Alright, it's already starting to look a little bit better. I got to go for another coat now, and it's filling in those grooves nicely. So yeah, we just need to continue, give you more progress. Oh, and let's see, I trimmed off the studs for the intercooler, and I had to remove about 4 millimeters from each one just so that they wouldn't bottom out. And let me tell you what, if you cut a stainless bolt with a cutoff wheel, that son of a gun's going to be hot when you finish. I barely touched it, and I got a nice little burn on my thumb to prove it. Anyway, safety tip. Alright, I squeezed a couple grommets front, or top and bottom, in on these. That'll give just a little bit of isolation from vibration. And when I torque them down, I'm not going to torque them down super tight, but I will put some Loctite on the bolts, because since they're coming in from the bottom and they're just tightening down, and there's no way to really put a lock washer on them or anything like that, I don't want them vibrating loose, so I'll probably use some blue Loctite on those when I put them into the intercooler, and I'll check it periodically to make sure they don't start moving on me. Alright, so I'm going to make some rubber isolators out of this old piece of heater hose here. So it's really tough to drill holes in rubber like this, so what I'm going to do is sandwich it in between two pieces of wood with some clamps, smash it flat like this with the other piece of wood, well, really on the bottom. This piece here will be on the top because it's thinner. And once they're clamped down tight, I'll run a few holes through the whole thing, and then I'll cut them into individual pieces. I want 4 of them for the top of the intercooler support. So I'm going to make 4 squares, and each one of those squares will have a 3/8 inch hole in it. So be right back. I'd like to show you this, but again, can't do it one-handed. I'm tripod impaired right now. Like so. Alright, so it's smashed flat in there. It can't go anywhere. It just makes it easier to drill the holes. I'll put 4 holes in that, and then when I take the rubber out, I'll cut it into 4 individual pieces. It's easier. And there's all 4 of them cut, and they should work pretty good. I'll still might probably have to trim the bolts a little bit, but we'll see. Alright, I'll do some trimming, but essentially that's how it's going to work. I got Holy smokes, let's see if I can get some light on it there. So washer, rubber, bracket, rubber, washer, and it looks like it's tightening out just about the right length, so I'm not going to trim that bolt right now. So I'll do a little cleaning up and make those look a little bit better, and then I'll figure out where I want to attach this and make the hole for it. Alright, that's what the top left mount's going to look like anyways. This will not be visible at all, so I'm not concerned about a little bit of hairiness on those washers, but it's connected there. It's got a nylock behind there, so it shouldn't loosen up. And we'll just have to repeat with this side. Now this side's going to have a little bit of an offset to it, so it may look a little weird, but it can't go straight up because there's some stuff behind here, and there's nothing I can do about that. So it'll probably connect a little offset in this area and then come down and go over, but it should still be fine. Maybe a little twist to it, we'll see. Okay, got the other side there. So essentially the intercooler is mounted, and it's solid but not so rigid that if I torque the front end it's going to rip the intercooler apart, and that was my biggest deal, because I mean the front end of this car is not all that rigid. If you launch, it'll twist stuff, and so it's mounted on all four corners, and there's a little bit of isolation on all four corners, so but yet it's not going to rattle, it's not going to go anywhere. So I call that a success. I'll have to take this apart again and paint those brackets, and just so they don't rust. And yeah, okay, that's going to do it for that piece of the project. That's enough sanding for right now, enough Bondo. I'm going to go ahead and lay down a coat of filler primer and then check for the worst imperfections. There are going to be a lot of them, and I'll go from there. I just need to get a better idea of what I'm working with. Alright, as you guys know, anything that shows up in primer is going to show up in paint, so there's quite a few little areas that are going to need to be addressed before I even think about putting color on here. Lots of stuff there. Now this makes it a little easier to figure out what needs to be addressed as you move forward, and it'll help protect the paint. But it's already looking pretty good. I mean, from a few feet away it doesn't look bad, but you and me both know that's not good enough. Another pass, and it's starting to look a little bit better. Got a lot of the lines out. There's still a few there. I know it's probably hard to see in the video, but there's still some imperfections that I need to get rid of before I call it good. We keep working. Alright, well, that's it. First coat of paint, and I don't even know if there'll be a second. At some point you just got to call it good. I could sit there and spend more hours refining that finish on there, but it's never going to be perfectly flat because of all the different contours and warped metal and whatnot, but it certainly will be fine for an inner fender well. Alright, so we're going to call that part good, and once it finishes drying, we'll be able to finally start moving on to some more interesting things than this. But that's it. Alright, just when you think you're done, you're not done. Alright, so after putting the turbo in, which is under the blanket right now, and the downpipe is going to interfere with where this is so stupid, let me just move it out of the way. Alright, so the downpipe is going to interfere with the pipe that comes off of the throttle body and then into the fender well. This just, I mean, I could put it up there, but it's a pain in the ass because you got to twist it all over the place. Suffice it to be said, it's going to interfere at the edge of the turbo here, and not very much clearance around this V-band clamp, and it really just doesn't work very well because of the geometry. Now I guess this hole here, even though it's factory, might have moved over the years from model to model, but mine's not in the right spot. Very difficult to try to figure out exactly where it needs to be, so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to enlarge the hole to greatly oversized to give myself plenty of room to work, and then I'm going to fill in the gaps in what I hope is a creative way that I'll share with you at the end, that I think will look good and make for a nice appearance and prevent rattles. We'll see how it goes. First I'm going to cut that out and see if it gives me the clearance it needs. That's about as much as I can cut out from the top and the rear part and not get into things behind it, such as the bulge where you need clearance for the wheels and the inner fender well and the shock tower itself. So we're we're going to start with that.